I'm Dan Sickles,
I'm Antonio Santini.
and we are the directors and producers of Dina. So I grew up with Dina. My dad was her teacher in high school. He was a special education teacher outside of Philadelphia, where Dina lives. And after graduation, he started a group for developmentally disabled adults. And that group still meets bi-monthly in like the basement of the local public library. And I grew up going to those meetings. So I always knew about Dina. I've known her story for a very long time. Everyone that's in the film has actually known me since the time I was born. So when we heard that she was getting married again, we thought that it would be an interesting thing just to go down and investigate what a film about her and her community could be. Initially, we started with a wider focus. We started attending the meetings and just getting to know everyone again, and just seeing what was going on. And gradually, Dina became the center of focus of the film, and that's essentially how it came together.
The whole aesthetic is designed so that we're invisible in in the story, right? It's an illusion that you create because obviously the team is very small. It's only Adam, Dan, and me. We're always on set. Um, we decided not to move the camera ever, and that allowed us to have a frame that is visible and a frame that is then outside. So around is where everything's happening, so it really does end up feeling like a set because the place of shooting is once at a time. It's not like our first movie where we would move the camera and swing it around and everything was a potential thing. Once, what would happen with that was that when you film swinging around and you're trying to capture things, it becomes overwhelming. And you're looking at one way, but you may be forgetting that something more interesting is happening here. Or maybe if you step back, it will look different. There will be context to the action as opposed to this close-up. And in our first movie, there was a constant dialogue happening. Adam he really liked to be very close, and he liked texture and, and the color, and maybe Dan thought something was more interesting, or maybe because of the language barriers, something was happening here, but then maybe I heard something in Spanish happening over here. So it was a constant, I think the hardest thing was probably always trying to align the vision, right? But here we designed an approach where we had rules that we all had to stick to. So once the shot was set, that was the shot. And then it was great because then we really got to focus on the action. And so if something wasn't working, then we would adjust and kind of, provoke the environment to kind of work towards the story, you know.
Yeah, the good thing about like building such a specific container, I guess, is that you can find freedom then within that form. If you know what the rules are, if everybody on set definitively knows what's working, and how to make that work, then you can find flexibility within it. You're really free to work within whatever that container might be. So in this case, it was very static shots, but that then also provided us with a means to really study the apartment and know exactly where the camera needed to be for specific action. When they sit on the couch, that's a specific spot and a specific lens for the camera. When they go into the bedroom, that's a specific spot and a specific lens. So when you can get that sort of specificity, then you can really start to like listen to what's happening. And again, that's why like the film has all of these quieter moments that are some of the most profound moments.
Well, Dina's, so our movie is not a social issue documentary, right? It's a movie, which means that Dina is not a subject, she's a protagonist. So Dina's a collaborator throughout the whole process. So Dina is as engaged in the production as we are. And when we shoot a scene, which is a real moment where, say, she's trying to be intimate with her husband. She's both able, because of her nature and her capacity and talent, to be both in the moment and also aware of the camera and what it's recording. Same as Scott. They're simply just are able to retain what we, I guess, call a look of authenticity. So when sometimes we cut, right, because we say we'll be shooting a shot for like 3 hours, she'll come back to the team almost like a production person and not revise, because we don't play back. You know, we don't really, the camera can't play back, but we also don't want to show her necessarily in that moment because it's like 2 a.m. But she goes back and we talk. You know, she's like, oh, how do you think it was? Do you think it was good? Do you think you got what you wanted? You know, do you think that we should go here because this will give you more information about this? Or don't forget that before this I was getting ready in the bathroom. You know, so like it's a collaboration, and we need to train ourselves to listen very closely, because when we listen, it's when we find out about, you know, all the most amazing things. It's like, oh right now we may be focusing on Dina, but Scott says something about his dad. It means something awesome is happening with Scott and his dad in the other room, you know? So we have to be like very aware of the things that they're giving us. And so as opposed to the first movie where I think we were more focused on, I would say, projecting ourselves onto the subjects and kind of really playing the aesthetic, really showing our visions. And I think this one we really were trying to focus and just really listen and be quiet and let them kind of direct the movie.
Definitely. And I think it's been, you know, I think it's an overwhelming experience for her to see the film, to be going to film festivals, to be doing press. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, she's never really been given much of an opportunity to walk into a room and automatically receive the dignity and the respect that you and I would receive. You know, we need to remember that, like, Scott and Dina and their community, it's an invisible community, you know. We know that they exist, but they're always they're always othered. And even the media that represents their experience a lot of the times is very reductive and infantilizing, you know. So this film, you know, something that we worked towards was almost inverting that and showing that Scott and Dina are whole, complicated people with aspirations and desires and wants, and maybe sometimes weaknesses, you know. And for us that's important, and people respond to that. So after a screening, when, you know, there's a crowd of people who rush Dina and Scott and say, like, oh, we want to meet you, we want to talk to you, and they start asking them questions, that in of itself is a very new experience for them, because that never happens. The only place that they get questions is usually in a doctor's office, right? When they're also serving them the diagnosis that others them. So I mean, it's been really cool to watch, like, Dina blossoming into this self-identified diva that she's become. You know, she's really started to refer to her fans, to her public, you know, and that's awesome, because it's great to see that she's willing and able and eager to continue to take that space. You know, the film started because she was somebody that I knew that was always hungry to tell her story. You know, that it wasn't built on an ambush. It was built in collaboration with somebody who knew that they had something that they wanted to say. And Dina has a lot to say, you know, and it's great to see that she's continued to be so brave in that pursuit of getting it out.
You got advice for us?
Yeah, right. No, it's I don't know. I would say that it's going to be difficult. That you shouldn't expect anything other than for it to be difficult. Even when you finish the film, it's going to be difficult. Even when it premieres at its first festival, it's going to be difficult. Even after you sell the film, it's going to be difficult. So I think that you personally need to have an understanding as to why the film is important to you, why it needs to be made. And like that you need to protect as much as you can. Because a lot of different people are going to come in with a lot of different perspectives that are going to not taint, but you know, that are going to bounce off of that pure understanding of what it is that you're doing. So I mean that would be my advice. Like it's you know, even the second time around, even after Sundance, it's still our baby. You know, we really think of our films like as our kids. You know, we got it into Harvard, it graduated, you know, with incredible honors, and we're still pushing it to be better and to be bigger and for it to get all of the things that we believe that it deserves. So in a way also, I guess, to never really be satisfied either.
If there are kids watching, now that we're older, I think you just have to really ask yourself, why are you making the movie? Or why do you want to make a movie? You know, when you want to, sometimes people want to be filmmakers, but they hadn't thought of the movie, you know, and it's okay if that's where you are at, but try to work, I think, past that, because people want to watch a movie, and it's not really about your look. And I think it's really important to understand the intention of the movie. You know, our intention with this movie was, with our first movie, was building a bridge. You know, and I think that's the spirit of the movie, and also celebration. You know, we wanted to celebrate these subjects, and we wanted to, and that's why it looks that way. You know, and that the intention crafts everything. That's where the aesthetic comes from. It's not going online and looking for a cool look and kind of replicating it and having screenshots and replicating. It's, if you trust the intention and it's honest, everything will come from there. And listening to that, you know, and same with our second movie, you know, the way that it looks, comes directly from the intention of the conversation that Dan and me are having, and why it is that we're collaborating together. Why it is that we're trying to work together and join resources to get somewhere, you know. I think that's just really important. You need to know. It sounds kind of obvious, and I feel like I've heard it when I was younger, but it makes more sense now. It's like you really need to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Otherwise, you're just gonna make not a great movie.
It's good advice.
I'm old, so.